Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 30th, 2010. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Steve Wilkes and I taste the toast of Christmas past, a vertical tasting of our 4 end-of-the-year barley wines, starting with this year's brew and working our way back, all the way back to 2007. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through both basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. On Facebook, I am facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link during this holiday season on our basicbrewing.com site. This month was a record, and we're very grateful of that. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we appreciate your support greatly. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Home Brewers Association on our site, too. And you can find our Basic Brewing iPhone and Android podcast apps on their respective stores, and we're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, too. And I think the video podcast should be out there now as well. I hope that everybody's having a great holiday season. I had a good week off last week. I came back from my little time off with both my waistline and my email inbox bulging, so I appreciate your patience if you wrote me a note during that time. I think I'm caught up now, maybe. While I was away, I bottled the last of the 4 experimental batches for the BYO-BBR collaborative experiment on mashing techniques. I need to get the new form out there for you guys to send in your data on our website. That will be at basicbrewing.com/experiment. I believe if you go there right now, as I speak right now, you will see the form for the last one, the bottle aging experiment. If you see that and you've done your data, be patient. Hopefully by the time you hear me next week, it will be out there. The deadline we've set is at the end of next week, so I can't wait to see what you guys have found out and how many are participating. We've been talking over the past few weeks through the mailbag about the second runnings of batch sparging. Some say they get more out than they put in, especially with higher gravity beers. In other words, if you add a certain volume of sparging water after you collect your first runnings from a batch sparge, you'll get more in volume than you added. Well, this week I got 2 letters with similar explanations why that may be. Let's start out with Adrie from the Netherlands. He says, "This morning on my way to work, I listened to your latest podcast. You were reading a mail about the mysterious water multiplication at sparging. I think the explanation is very simple. The volume of the wort is more than the volume of the added water minus the volume of water absorbed by the grain because a part of the grain dissolves into the water. 75% of the grain weight is converted to sugars, and those sugars have volume too. If you have 5 kilograms of grain," Adrie says, "you get 3.75 kilograms of sugars out of that grain into the wort. This is approximately 2.3 liters of sugar. A part of that remains in the spent grains. If you have a brewhouse efficiency of 70%, you end up with 1.6 liters of sugar. So the extra volume may be sugars being rinsed from the grain in the mash tun. Makes perfect sense. And also may explain why you see more of a difference with higher gravity beers, because there's more residual sugar in the grain to be rinsed out by that second sparge, that second batch sparge." Well, they say great minds think alike. There's this from Dan. Dan says, "I was thinking about the issue of batch sparge change of volume. It really didn't hit me as to why this change may occur until you read the email last week from someone who stated that this occurred with high-gravity beers. I remembered something from high school chemistry, which is more than I can say for myself. When you make a certain concentration of a solution, you start with a smaller amount of water and add the amount of chemical you wish to dissolve, and then top up to the final volume. The reason is that a change of volume occurs when water dissolves a substance. I would hypothesize that the same occurs when one would batch sparge a high-gravity beer. The sparge water is able to dissolve a lot of extra sugars from the grains. In turn, this would change the volume of the original sparge water. I would really have to do a lot of extra research to figure out how much change occurs because there's so many different substances in the wort that it would be really complicated to calculate. Dan says, sounds like a job for Kai Troyster. I agree. I bet Kai could do that. If anyone else has a hypothesis, I would really like to hear it. Well, so would I. So Dan and Adrian are on the same page, and I think they're right. Now that you say it, it sounds obvious, of course. And like Dan, I would love to hear other theories. But what you're trying to do is rinse sugars out of the grain when you sparge, and when you, if you got exactly the same volume of water out that you put in, then it would be clear, right? Because there would be nothing coming out extra. But what you're doing is you're trying to rinse those sugars out of the grain, so that is going to add to the volume of wort coming out. And the more residual sugars there are left in there for that second sparge, the more volume that you're going to see difference. And so, therefore, with a higher gravity beer where there's going to be more residual sugars left over in that mash tun, you would see more of a difference. Of course. Man, it's fun to interact with smart people. It makes makes sense to me. Again, if you have another theory, let me know. But it just makes sense. It's kind of like a aha moment. On a completely different note altogether, Travis writes in from Fargo, North Dakota. I recently was accepted into the American Brewers Guild's Craft Brewers Apprenticeship Program, and I wanted to check with you and your listeners to see if anybody has gone through that particular program, and if so, if they have any advice for someone who is enrolled. My training won't begin for at least a year, and I would like to know about any good resources, books, videos, etc., that will help prepare me for this endeavor. Also, Travis says if they just have any practical advice for what to expect and what would be good to know before the program, I'd really appreciate it. So there you go. If you have any, congratulations, by the way, Travis. He says he's a beginning home brewer, and so he may be starting, sort of from ground level, jumping into the commercial world. So that's a wonderful thing. If you have any advice for Travis as he heads into the American Brewers Guild Apprenticeship Program, drop me a line, james@basicbrewing.com, or just use the contact form on basicbrewing.com. This may not be the kind of thing that I would read on the show, but I'll be glad to forward your note to Travis. Or, of course, if there's anything of general interest in your advice to Travis, I'll share that too. I've also recommended to Travis that he post the question on our Facebook page as well. It seems to be a good place for interaction between folks. It's become a tradition around here that I brew a big beer at the end of the year. This year I departed a little bit from that tradition and brewed a fairly moderate gravity all-wheat hoppy beer. And you can see how that was brewed on the Basic Brewing video episode that I'll release later this week. And the recipes that you will hear talk about today and on the video podcast are going to be available on the iPhone and Android apps and in the description of these episodes on basicbrewingradio.com and basicbrewingvideo.com. What Steve and I have done is we bundled all four of the recipes for these beers into one PDF file using the template from the brewer's logbook, so you can kind of see how that works. And hopefully you can get some ideas on how you can do your own special end-of-the-year holiday beer. So let's get to the tasting. Steve and I got together after we shot the video podcast and sampled what are now rare beers here in the studio. Well, Steve Wilkes, welcome again to the Basic Brewing Studios.
Oh, it's fun to be here, James, as always.
You're not going to play along? You're not going to play along?
Well, I would, but I might have sweaty balls. And if you get that joke.
You watch Saturday Night Live.
That's right.
We did this last year where we got together at the end of the year and we tasted our barley wines, and we've got a little collection this year. We've got 4. And next year we'll have 4 again because we've got the very last of the original one from 2007.
Yeah.
The what I call the fruitcake barley wine because we made fruitcake with it.
That's right.
But we can work our way backwards if you want. And we've recorded 2 episodes today. We recorded the episode with the cookies.
Yes, delicious.
And we recorded the episode with this year's hoppy wheat beer. And I hope somebody gets the phone. So the hoppy wheat beer and last year's barley wine,
which was delicious.
So let's just start. This is kind of a relaxed holiday episode, and this is I think going to be like the 4th episode in a row that we're just standing in the studio drinking beers. Which is a trend that I'm not all opposed to.
Well, it has its appeal.
As long as we get some good information out there for people.
Well, we're trained journalists, so we can do this.
So this time was the what I was shooting to call it a wheat wine.
There's a dry wind blowing across the plains.
Made with cool wheat. Wheat wine made with cool wheat. Anyway, so it's these are all small batches. This was like a 2.5 gallon batch with 6 pounds of malted wheat. 8 ounces of that went into the oven for 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, just to get some color into the beer. And then I mashed in the bag 25 minutes at 120, 20 at 148, 30 at 158. And then boiled with Magnum for 60 minutes, Simcoe for 30 minutes, Centennial for 15 minutes, Cascade for 5 minutes, and then Amarillo at flameout.
It was an incredible beer.
You were quite enamored of it.
I am enamored of it. And it's the hops. And when I saw the hop bill on that, I thought, whew, you're scaring me here.
Because you don't like too bitter beers.
I don't like the I like the floral. I like flavor and the bouquet. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the back bittering is sometimes too much for me.
So I was amazed. This is very similar to the hop regimen that Chris Colby recommended for, that what was it? The original one that was the split boil experiment. And I liked it so much that I used it for the Irish Moss experiment, and I'm using it for the the brew in the bag versus the batch sparge experiment, and I used it for this. I'm stuck in a rut, but it's a pretty good rut to be in.
Yeah, it's like the Oregon Trail of ruts.
But the hops are different in this wheat beer. It's 100% wheat. The hops to me present differently in this beer than they did the barley beer. Don't you agree?
I agree completely. I was just very surprised at how light and fruity the hops presented themselves in this beer. I expected it to be, well, just a big hop bomb without much else going on. So I'm sure that you used them judiciously, but it was just really delightful. And I was also very impressed with this beer and just how clean it was. Mm. Just what was the yeast that you used? I'm sorry if you mentioned it.
This was the I'm glad you mentioned that, because this was some of the yeast dregs or the slurry from a previous wheat beer that I'd done, just a little kind of a session 100% wheat beer. And it was Y yeast 3333, I believe, the German wheat yeast. And I had this bucket. And after I racked the beer off, I looked at the bottom of this plastic fermenter bucket, and I said, look at all that yeast. And I felt really guilty pouring it down the drain again. So what I did was I just sanitized a little Glad, what is that, a pint? What was that?
Yeah, it's about a pint.
Plastic container.
Yeah.
And I sanitized it in iodophor, and I just poured the yeast sediment, the slurry, into that.
Yeah. Put
the cap on it, and put it in the fridge.
Wow.
And then I took a quarter cup of that and put it in this beer.
How long has it been in the fridge? How long can you store that?
Well, it had just been in the fridge for just a few days, a couple, 3 days probably when I used it again. But it's been in the fridge, I'll have to look that up, but it's been in there since. Well, let's see. I've got the brewer's logbook here.
Ooh.
And of course, I forgot to write down the. A good tool does not work well when you don't use it well. But I brewed the wheat wine on November 19th, it looks like. So a couple of days before that, probably. Yep. And we smelled that container with the yeast in it, and it still smelled good.
It really did. And I have a question for you.
Yes.
Could you freeze that?
No.
Okay, so you would kill the yeast.
You would burst the cells.
Okay.
Now, there is a way that you can freeze slants of yeast, and that was covered in a previous Basic Brewing Radio podcast. But no, not in a.
But you can't just take and pour a pint of that into a jug and freeze it. And
can't make a
back.
Yeast sickle and expect to plop that in a batch of beer and make it go.
Well, why not?
Well, I guess you could try. You could try pretty near anything. So that was this year. That was the 2010 end of the year. And that started out at 1066. I don't know if I mentioned, and it's like 6.8% alcohol. And, as they say, it hides it pretty well. It doesn't taste like it's that big of a beer, but nice and citrusy. Yeah. To me, there's a lot of grapefruit, and to me, it reminds me of the rind of the grapefruit peel. It's not just the peel, but it's kind of the rind around the fruit itself.
Well, it's delicious and a recipe worth sharing.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we'll put I'll put these recipes on a PDF, and I will attach it in the extras section of the iPhone and Android apps, and you can go to the Basic Brewing Radio website and look at the description of this episode, and there should be a link in there for a PDF.
Yeah.
So should we move? Let's talk about this past year's.
So we're doing a vertical tasting. Is that right?
Sort of, yeah.
Because we're going year to year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same beer. It's not technically a vertical tasting because it's not the same beer over and over again.
Right. But it's close enough.
You could say, well, in the same way that you would, Anchor does their holiday beer every year, and it's different every year.
Right.
They use different spices or they change it up a little bit. So if you were to do a tasting of various vintages, would you say vintage with
I think so.
beer? Because a vintage refers to wine, but I guess you could say vintage. Anyway, different years, there would be different beers. So anyway, last year's Holiday Barley Wine, the first year in 2007, I made the barley wine to go into a fruitcake.
Right.
Last year, I made a barley wine with ingredients from a fruitcake.
Yes, that's right.
And this was a 6-pack batch because it was so crazy.
Yeah.
So if you'll remember, it started out with just 4 pounds of two-row, a couple ounces of 90 Lovibond Crystal, some aromatic. Then I put brown sugar, I put molasses, I put a half a cup of roasted chopped pecans. I put candied pineapple mango.
Well, hold the mayo.
Papaya, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and nutmeg.
Wow. And
it turned out, because the additional sugar, turned out to be 12.7% alcohol.
It's a big beer.
And we enjoyed that beer last year, did we not?
We enjoyed it very much.
And we enjoyed it this year as well.
We did indeed.
We tried it on camera. I've still got some here. And it's warming up to room temperature. You had all yours, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I couldn't. And I was thinking about how it's very smooth.
Mm-hmm. Smooth.
And
smooth. It's
smooth. But it is smooth. That's a proper word for that. And I think it might be the nuts. Okay. I'm going to leave now. And I'll see you down at the Big Boys Burger Hut later, where it's definitely the nuts. Anyway, I think the pecans, the oil, gave it a kind of.
Really? You think that kind of smoothed out the. It's not oily by any means.
No, it's not oily, but that's my theory.
Boy, it is tasty.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. You can tell that there's a bunch of alcohol in there, but there's enough residual sweetness that it doesn't knock you out. It finished out at 10.26.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of body left in there.
Yeah.
But when we first opened it, it was still cold, obviously. We smelled it, and on camera I said it smelled like eggnog.
Yep.
What I meant was it smelled like the nutmeg in eggnog. And you can still, as it's warmed up, you can still smell that, Christmassy holiday spice. And then when you taste it, it's got some fruitiness in there.
Oh, yeah.
From all that mango and papaya and pineapple and stuff.
But you don't taste those flavors directly.
No. But
you don't take a sip and go, oh, that's mango.
Right. I think they all meld together. And it's not, you look at the ingredient list and you think this is going to be ridiculous. But I think it's a legitimate beer, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Duh.
I'm going to save that for later. That's in a separate little glass. Maybe I'll split that little. We've still got some of the dregs in the other room. And one of the drawbacks of that beer, probably because it was such a small batch, but there was a lot of stuff in the bottom of the bottle.
It's pretty chunky.
It's like a cookie in a glass.
Or a fruitcake in a glass.
But we've got another 2 or 3 left of that, and I think I'm going to send one of those to Mike Tonsmeyer because he's so generous sending his beers, and I think that's a beer that measures up to some of the stuff that he
I did too.
has sent down.
He will enjoy that.
So now last year or 2008, this is based on it's another 6-pack beer. 4 pounds of two-row, 2 ounces of 90 Lovibond Crystal. This one has 2.5 ounces of raisins for 60 minutes and 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice for 5 minutes. This one is 9.4% alcohol, and it's hopped with Fuggles. The previous one just had 0.7 of an ounce of Fuggles.
Okay.
So not very much. But let's open this.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple more of these, too. Do you want to do the honors? Or?
Sure. Try anyway.
You know how to use that thing? There's not much of a hiss, and I don't remember this as being a whole lot carbonated, even last year when we tried it. But it sure is pretty.
That's beautiful.
It's got a nice head on it. How would you describe copper color, maybe?
Yeah, it's coppery. And,
Cheers.
Cheers. Doesn't have as big a nose as the Shears.
No, it's got kind of a bready smell to it. There's not any hops to it at all. It's smelling kind of aged to me. And I can't decide whether that's a positive thing or not. What do you think?
I'm going to say it's a positive thing at the moment.
Okay. I haven't tasted it yet.
I have. It tastes good.
Oh, there's a bit of a it's a lot lighter than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it is. It's lighter. It kind of at the moment it's like the little brother of this year. Of last year's.
Really?
So kind of
without all the spice.
Well, maybe that's what I mean.
There's a little bit of raisiny
well,
stuff.
the pumpkin pie spice I get. And the raisins. It just seems it seems like a lighter. Well, that's not really quite right either. It's real good. I think I like last year's better.
This is older than and it's been better taken care of. But it's we did the beer aging experiment where we put the hoppy beer in the attic, and that didn't turn out so well. That wasn't, and we were talking about is it just wrong to age beers? But this is an argument for maybe there are some beers that do take on interesting characters over time.
I am really getting the raisins all of a sudden. Maybe just a few seconds even of opening up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting alcohol. I actually am getting this is less alcoholic than last year's.
Right.
This seems more alcoholic.
I agree. It's 9.4% alcohol. Last year's was 12.7%. But there's not all that spice and there's not all that kind of fruity stuff in there to mask it. And the finishing gravity, this finished fairly low at like 1.008, 10.08. So it is fairly thin in comparison. So that may help those alcohol notes to shine through, whereas before, it was kind of a substantial, kind of meaty beer, mouthfeel-wise.
Mm-hmm. It's a good beer. I mean, there's no defects in it. It hasn't gone south on us.
It's definitely not sour. There was nothing. There's no ring around the bottle neck.
Unlike that batch I just ruined.
You have a brewing disaster story.
Oh yeah. Well, I brewed a batch of beer, and we did the experiment where we left the beer on the lees for
a couple weeks.
I left it on for like 3 months,
and the airlock dried out.
And I bottled it anyway. I thought, I opened the lid.
Hope springs eternal.
You never know. And now I do.
So it's not that you never know. You'll know later.
You're not willing to admit it.
Sour's good.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, sour's good. I like sour beers. It'll be okay.
Well, I wonder if so it did go sour.
Yes, it is a sour beer. It's not. It doesn't taste rancid. But it's just got this.
So not like rubber bandy autolyzed.
No, not at all.
Kind of thing. So I wonder if the airlock didn't go dry.
What would have happened?
If it would have been okay, or if there's just some stuff in the air.
I don't know.
In there.
Who knows? I mean, I brewed it, I guess like in June or something, and just was very busy. It just never got to it, and I finally I got to bottle this stuff, and I cracked it was in a plastic bucket, and I cracked the lid open, and it had a pellicle across the top. And I went, but it didn't smell bad.
So you're starting to climb up the side of the thing.
I said, well, I got all these clean bottles and nothing better to do. So I tried one the other day.
Ooh.
And it's pretty rough.
Wow. You could save it for Easter and you could dye eggs in it.
Well, you could. Yeah. Actually, I thought about saving it to cook bratwurst in, but I don't even think it measures up to that.
Oh.
So,
well,
enough of that. Let's go back to talking about good beer, which this is.
It is a tasty beer, and I don't want to kill it. I think it's time to go on to talk about the next one, but I don't want to kill it because it's tasty, and I'd like for it to sit out for a little while so we can taste it. And we are splitting 12-ounce bottles. These are better here. We got an assortment of plastic cups.
Oh, these are the holiday plastic cups.
That's right. This is Chinette. Cut crystal Chinette. I spare no expense. Yeah. Your Amazon purchase thingies are going to a good cause here.
Okay, so tell us about this beer.
Okay, this is the original. This is the very last one.
Ooh.
So treat it with reverence.
I'm trying to let you hear if there's any fizz.
No. I can't remember if I even primed it. Maybe I did. That's 3 years ago. So this is the original barley wine that started this whole little trend of, there's not any head at all. I wonder if it's just flat. I wonder if I didn't prime it at all. This is the one that started the original thing. This is the one that we made the wassail out of.
Oh, yes.
And the fruitcake out of. Cheers. One more time.
Cheers.
Just stink.
Oh, just a little.
No, wow. Hey.
No, it's really good. It's got a...
Oh, man. That's just like sticking your nose in the grain in the crystal malt bin. Boy, that smells good.
It's very grainy.
Oh man, I like that a lot. I'm gonna save my taste till after I tell about this. This was very simple. This is just a 3-quart batch or 3-liter batch, a 6-pack. 4 pounds of 2-row, 2 ounces of 60 Lovibond Crystal, and then half an ounce of Fuggles for 60 minutes and 0.15 ounces of Fuggles for 15 minutes. 10.6% alcohol by volume. I love the way that smells.
It's very nice. I'm nodding my head here.
That is all about the grain roastiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got some.
It's real caramely.
Yeah, exactly. It's like smelling a bag of or there's also. Well, I just said it was like putting your head in the grain box. So now if I say it's putting your head in the caramel bag, it's going to contradict what I said earlier.
No, it just complements it.
Wow,
and I get some raisins, even though I know there are no raisins in it.
Did you taste it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's completely flat.
Yeah. And you don't remember if you primed it at all?
I don't remember.
I'm going to say you didn't.
Okay, let's just do. That way I won't have failed. It seems like I remember putting some prime tabs in there, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I skipped this bottle because it's just flat as a pancake. There's no.
Yeah, it's like it's. And this, I mean, obviously the seal was good. The beer's good.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that's tasty. Even though it's flat, it is. It's very caramely.
Yeah.
And very kind of sweet.
All of these beers are worth a brandy snifter.
Mm-hmm.
A nice brandy snifter in front of the fire.
And we may find out here in a few minutes whether that's good enough just to have at room temperature.
Yeah. Yeah. So hang on. We'll ding, 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 ding.
Here, hold this under your arm.
Yeah. Well, what can we take away from this? What can we take away from this tasting today?
Well, I think it brings out the best in homebrewing, I think, because homebrewing is all about having fun and having an adventure and sharing with friends.
Yep.
And kind of learning over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a bit what our show is about all those things. It's about having fun, learning new things, looking back over time.
Yeah, because, a lot of the stuff we do, we really are doing it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come back to these beers 2 and 3 and 4 years later is really a treat.
And it's in a similar. I've had a few sips of high alcohol beer, so I'm gonna get all philosophical now. But doing this vertical tasting, if we can call it that, of these beers, is similar to going through the archives of the podcast.
Yeah,
because it's they're kind of like little time machines. These when you do a beer, when you brew a batch of beer and you put it in the bottle or you put it in the keg, you're essentially capturing a moment of time there,
mm-hmm.
and that may change over time. But maybe it changes for the better, or maybe you can open that bottle and look back and say, and bring out those memories all again. I was listening to. I finally did a batch of cider. I'm finally doing a batch of cider. I saw some 100% apple cider at the grocery store. It's pasteurized, but other than that, there's no spices, there's no sweeteners, there's no added ingredients. It's just apple cider. And so I grabbed a jug of it and I brought it home, and I pitched some champagne yeast in it. Actually, what I did was I listened to the episode back in 2006,
mm-hmm.
and I can't remember the author's name, but he did a great job of talking about the history of cider and how he picks his apples and the different characters, each apples, and his technique of making cider is so simple. But it's been so long; it's been 4 years, and there's a lot about that interview I didn't remember, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and listened to it, and I said, wow, that's good information. So I relearned something listening to that episode.
So you inspired yourself to make some cider.
I broke my arm, patting myself on the back, and then I pitched some yeast into the cider. So I just pitched some champagne yeast into the cider and let it go. we'll see what happens. If it dries out too much with the champagne yeast, we can put some potassium sorbate in there or something and, retard the activity of that yeast and then back sweeten it later on. But my point was that even for me, I was there when that episode was recorded.
Yeah.
That is some knowledge and some information that is preserved.
Right.
Thanks to the interwebs. It is preserved forever, for even me. So, anyway, that was my deep philosophical bent.
And deep it was.
We'll climb out of it.
Well, what I can take away from this is that these are some damn good beers. And
well, thank you.
And I don't tend to. I pretty much brew and drink. So I'm not much of an archivist. If the beer is good, I kind of can't stay out of it. And if it's not good, well, then I just admit it and pour it out. Which luckily has only happened this one time. But this is such a treat to be able to go back and kind of, like you said, kind of relive these beer moments and to see how they change and age. And it's cool to be in a hobby that has this kind of longevity. That you have not just the moment that you're in, but that you can, relive the moment. And there aren't many hobbies. Checkers, maybe. Remember that Three King jump, in 1989? Yeah, I got it.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Richard Nixon's dog.
Well, yeah. No, I was talking about his wife's coat.
Or was that Patches?
It
was Checkers.
It's Checkers.
It was a Checkers speech.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I digress.
Which is the one that if you could go to the store and buy a 6-pack of, which one would it be?
It would be last year's.
The one with
all the
pecans stuff in it.
That's my favorite of the lot. I have praised all of these beers legitimately. My point just being that they're all really good beers. And I'm going to ask you the same question in a second. But I really like that one has kind of everything going for it, the one that you did last year. So the real fruitcake barley wine. But they all have different qualities. I love the hoppiness of this year's wheat beer. The one that we're just now drinking, the original one, it's flat. That's okay. But that graininess is really, really nice. But the one from last year is the one that just really speaks to me, and I would buy that by the bucket load.
Yeah, I would buy this year's wheat beer, the hoppy wheat beer, as an everyday drinker. But I would buy. Yeah, I think the last year's with all the wacky fruitcake thing may be my favorite as well, because it is so interesting, but it is a beer that I wouldn't want to drink every day or every week or even every month.
No, not at all. I agree completely. And I think it'll be very interesting a year from now when we're doing this again.
Yeah.
To see if we still have that same take, because maybe a year from now this beer will change to a point that we say, okay, well.
Yeah, it's done.
It's done.
And that's the risk that you take when you're aging beers in your cellar or your fridge or your attic. Hopefully not. But at a certain point, one would think every beer is going to go past and not be as good that day as it was the day before, and that's just a risk you got to take. So, I apologize for putting you through this grueling exercise today.
Who, me or the audience?
No, yeah, maybe both. No, I was talking to you.
Oh, okay.
I hate to, invite you over and so we could eat. Of course, you made the cookies, but so we could eat cookies and drink beer.
Gee, that's a tough life.
But it is the holidays.
That's right.
So I want to thank you. This is the end of near the end of the year, and or maybe this will be the end of the year Basic Brewing Radio episode.
Last 2010 episode.
Yeah. And I want to thank you again.
Well, thank you, James,
for being a part of it. And it's just amazing that it's gone on so long.
It really is. I remember when we did our first video show,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in Studio C, and really doing it as a lark, as a simulcast lark. And here we are 5 or so years later, and still at it. So
you never know.
You never know.
Well, thanks, everybody out there in Radioland. I hope you have a happy and prosperous 2011. And be safe, please. Enlist your significant other or, a good friend to drive you around to your holiday gatherings so that you don't have to, for your own safety and those of others. And, it's more fun when you don't have to think about that.
That's for sure.
So anyway, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, and happy brewing.
Well, thanks again to Steve for sticking around for so long. This brewing stuff is an awesome excuse, an awesome reason for us to get together on a regular basis. And we certainly look forward to 2011 and continuing. And I also enjoy getting together with everybody else. Andy and Alex and everybody that we play with on a fairly regular basis around here. Again, I hope that you have a safe and prosperous new year. Be sure to plan ahead and take a designated driver along with you if you decided to party away from home. I personally don't leave the house on New Year's Eve, amateur night and all. And, I want to be able to enjoy myself and not have to worry about that kind of thing. So please be safe, and we will see you again next year. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. Or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our new DVD is here, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, and our 2011 Brewers Logbooks are in stock as well. Check out our online store. Also, you can check out our other DVDs, Stepping into All-Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts, as usual, in the store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support greatly there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Nerf Vortex Mega Howler Orange Hasbro 45463. It's like a football with a fin on the back of it. Those are fun things. I remember when Nerf balls were just like balls of foam, just spheres. Now they got all kinds of, my son's got a gun. It's a long way from the little sponge ball. Anyway, I'm old. Canon 10x30 image stabilization binoculars with case, neck strap, and batteries. Cool. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through an associate link on basicbrewing.com as well. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.